completed all our presentations. So in case any of the audience, anybody has got any questions, you may either unmute and ask the question, or you can actually post it on the chat box, and we can actually take it from there.
Okay, Dilip, there's one question.
Yeah.
So from Osama, he's asking, do you provide any public health or disease registry case studies? I think it's to Hannah.
In this e-learning environment, no, I don't have any case study concerning public health or disease registries, but actually it is a very relevant question, and this is discussed in many different projects in Europe. So, for example, in Sweden and Finland. So you can easily get the information to the registries in an automatic way. And that is a big thing. And actually COVID-19 accelerated this discussion. But we don't have the big, say, wide enough data repositories yet that we could get all information to the registries. But this was a very good question.
Yeah, but Hara, just to add, I think HIMED project, the German HIMED project is aiming to create such registries, with
yes,
one oncology and some other disease-focused registries.
Yeah, so, HIMED is actually going to do that, and they have besides different oncological things, they have also cardiology. So yes. This is, and it is supported by the federal ministry.
Yeah, and the UK, there is the genome project, which is probably not a disease registry, but at the same time, it's the UK 10,000 genome or 1 lakh genome project or something. No?
Yes, and HIMED and the genomics project, this 100,000 genomes project, and also the IRIS genomics project. I discussed them in my e-learning environment, but they are research projects. So I understood maybe Osama, maybe you were referring to like the national registries. So these are like research related specific, more narrow registries that are being built.
Okay. The next question is again from he asked whether also do you have examples that uses mobile app, on the openEHR system, I think.
Sorry, can you say it
Yeah,
again?
I think the question is also, do you have examples that uses mobile apps on openEHR? I guess so, right? I think there's example SmartFire. So yeah, there are mobile applications on the openEHR solutions. I'm assuming that's what yes. So the next question is, how is security and privacy covered in openEHR?
Actually, I would like to give this to Dilip because you are the technical guy here. So maybe you would like to answer this.
Yeah. See. Okay. So there are two things here. One is there's a design aspect of privacy and security, which is clearly defined in the openEHR architecture, where there is a clear segregation between demographic data versus the clinical data. Okay, so there is a clear segregation. Like for example, the EHR compositions never contain the demographic details of the patient, or even the any demographic information, even personal ID. Person ID is not kept within the EHR compositions. Okay, so EHR composition normally connected to the EHR ID of the person, and the person has to in a good openEHR design, you need to have a demographic repository separately, where the patient will have a demographic ID, to an EHR repository where there is a EHR ID, and these IDs are like kind of brought together in the context of data access. Okay, so that's a design paradigm. Okay, so like I said before, openEHR is actually a set of design specifications and tools. So it talks about privacy and security in the design phase, but at an implementation phase, the implementers will have to still take care of the privacy and security, like any other application that you're building. It again depends upon the type of application, whether it is a web application or some other kind of application. So you still need to employ the standard security and privacy practices. Like in EHR.Network, for example, we have actually used the OWASP top 10 security guidelines to actually to shape our external facing security requirements, while in the design, in the internal platform design, we have like segregated services, completely isolated EHR and demographic data repositories. Okay, I hope that answers the question. Rupa, you want to add
Shivram,
anything?
yeah, Shivram, if you need any more information, you can post back here. So another question that Shivram is asking is that he's in contact with the Open Telehealth group, and his question is there shared approach being taken with OpenEHR? That Dilip maybe for you.
What I didn't get you. Can you repeat that once?
Shivram says that he's in contact with the Open Telehealth group, and his question is the OpenEHR the approach being taken there?
I don't know. Frankly, I'm sorry. I'm not very familiar with this open telemedicine telehealth
group.
Yeah, group. I have to look at it and then and understand it and comment on it. I can't really make a comment at this point.
Okay. Okay, then there is Natarajan who's asking about what is the cost associated with the course and the certification. The cost of the course.
Yeah. I'm posting it in the group. Okay, I'm posting the link to our website. Okay, where the course details are available.
Yeah, and I would like to add here that the certificate does not cost anything extra.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Hannah.
So then, Dr. Pramod is prompting me to say that it would be very helpful to everybody if we can give a specific example where openEHR was used for clinical information management and all the other parts of it, so that it becomes clearer. So, do we kind of want to talk, Dilip, a little bit about how openEHR was used in any of the solutions that we have done, so that it becomes very clear as to how we design the clinical data set?
Yeah, we can. Should we talk about what EMANAS, or should we talk about?
EMANAS should be good. Yeah, and that the fact that it's varied, it can support any kind of clinical data set. So that maybe that aspect.
Right. Okay. So where is it? Okay. Let's come back to the fundamental difference. Okay. Like so, see, openEHR is coming from the approach to openEHR design of models is what is called a maximal data set. Okay, as opposed to the minimal, the 80%, 80-20 rule that the FHIR adopts for interoperability, because FHIR is talking about disparate systems, whereas openEHR is talking about building robust systems where anything that that needs to be recorded in any patient context, any healthcare context, has to be should be recorded, should be recordable. Okay, so that it works. The system works across all different use cases. Okay, like for example, when we were looking at the mental health management solution for the Karnataka government. Okay, so the way we approach it is to look at what is available in the CKM, in the knowledge manager, Okay, where if you take each of the archetypes there, like for example, simple things like BP, for example, if you take the archetype, they are mature archetypes on the CKM, and if you look at the history of evolution, you can see that hundreds of people from across the world, doctors and technology professionals, have come together to look at and create those maximal models. Okay, so that model will work for a simple GP interaction where you record a simple systolic diastolic pressure to a clinical situation where a heart surgeon is actually recording the BP just before a heart surgery. Okay, at that point you probably involve a lot more data from the context. Okay, so you need to record probably what was the position of the patient, where was measurement taken, what device was used, what was the cuff size. Okay, so much more information is required to qualify that that one piece of information, which is the BP. Okay, so that is the approach that openEHR takes. So when you model, okay, so you can actually, depending upon the kind of requirement, you can model the data sets so that it actually exactly fits the requirement of the need. Okay, so that is where we say physician is in control. Physician actually can decide the design of his or her EHR system. Okay, so they can actually decide, okay, this is my usage context. Okay, if it is a GP application, you would take the same BP archetype, but you would constrain all the data out, and your form will have just the the systolic and diastolic values. Okay, whereas if you use if you're building a system for a heart surgeon, probably the whole BP archetype, a lot more information needs to be gathered. Okay, so this is where the flexibility of openEHR comes, and both these become queryable across. So if you are actually doing a BP query, both these values will come up. Okay, and you could be using them in multiple forms. So you use these to create you use individual archetypes to create templates represent a particular use case, a form in a EHR solution. Okay, and you could be using the same BP archetype in a GP form versus a cardiac surgeon's form versus a wearable device data. Okay, all kinds of different situations, you would use the same archetype, and you would be using much different templates in which this is used. But when you query, you can actually query across all of this and look for data. Okay, so this is the strength of openEHR and the flexibility that it brings to a clinical system. Because more often, one of the biggest complaints that I have, based on my previous experience with developing systems, is that as you move forward, the needs of the physicians who are using the system become more and more complex, because as they use the system, they realize they can actually do more with it. Okay, now this becomes a big problem for application developers, because doctors will come back, and then some of the changes may look very simple to the outside, but it will involve very complex changes to the data schema and and redesign. So it will the developers will end up redesigning the whole system. So this keeps making the EHR systems very complex. So there are studies which show that there was a study in UK which actually studied an EHR solution, which is a 10-year-old solution. And they found that the database had some 5,000 tables, and then the DB administrator of the time did not know what 50% of the tables were doing. Okay, that's because every time there is such a need, the developer will create a new table to take care of that. Okay, so this is how the systems become complex. Whereas in openEHR world, the system complexity never increases with with the requirement for more data sets. Okay, it remains the same. Okay, so this is, I think, where the big difference is. And at the same time, if you want to interoperate with any other system which is not openEHR compliant, you could use interfaces like FHIR at the front end, where openEHR data, which is internally, is translated into a FHIR resource and shared with other people to understand. But if you're sharing with a openEHR compliant system, then the data as it is can be shared. The whole composition can be just migrated from one system to the other. Okay, these are like XML documents, XML JSON documents, you can pull them out and then and put it into another system. The data migration is as easy as that. Yeah.
Thanks, Dilip. Yeah, I think we don't have any further questions.
Okay.
And I think we are close a little, just about right at 6 o'clock, 6:03.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we are on time. And thanks, Pramod. Thanks for all the questions. Okay. Okay. Right. Oh, the difference.
Are there any more? I don't think there are any more questions. Yeah.
No.
Dr. Rupa, just a quick thing, please. Sorry, my name is Satya Idraj.
Yeah. Yes, Satya.
Right. Yeah, just a quick thing, please, to Hannah and Dilip. It's like, I've actually worked with UK clients before and Irish clients before. My question to you is, how do I actually convince a fence sitter client, for example, who is willing to procure a brand new EHR, because open EHR is completely open standards based.
Right. Hannah, you
So,
want to contribute?
so can you repeat the question? So what?
Right. Especially in the European world, most of the clients would be willing to procure EHR applications, but they are actually quite a bit wary about the open applications. How do you actually convince those kind of fence sitting clients to actually go ahead and how do you persuade them to take the open EHR cause?
So if I understood right, you are talking about the procurement, for example, in Ireland and England regarding the open ecosystems and the renewal of
Absolutely.
ESRs. Yeah. Okay. So let us take say in England or the UK. So we have now over 20 trusts in the UK, which are sort of renewing the old traditional architecture to open-air based architecture step by step. So they start by building first the open-air data repository underneath, and then they take the EHR functionalities one after another and make it a open-air module. So the functionality is like one module, and those functionalities, they are replaced from the old world to the new world one after another until we can cease or stop the traditional legacy totally. And one of those case studies is Somerset et Thornton Trust in England. So they have gradually been adopting open-air based modules and having still the legacy in parallel, but gradually taking some functionalities from the legacy to be based on open-air. And then we have another approach. We just keep the legacy there, as a whole, but we take innovations complementing the legacy. So, for example, in Royal Salford, we have all script legacy. We take all data to the open-air data repository from all script, and then we add innovations, innovative open-air based modules to utilize the data from this open-air data repository. So we have different approaches, but the main thing to understand is that in the open-air world, we do gradual change. So it's very rare that we buy the whole ecosystem once. So we want to go module after module. And in England, in the UK, it's actually very, very common now because they start making integrated care systems. So they want to integrate social care and healthcare. And in order to do that, they need open-air data repositories, and they need functionalities or modules on top of the open-air data repository to build that kind of a integrated care agenda.
Sure, Hannah. So it's like the
I don't
bottom-up
know
approach. Yeah,
if I at all answered your question, but hope so.
sort of. Thanks a lot.
So just to add, okay, Satya, just to add to that, okay, see what I feel is, so first of all, what we have to understand is actually openEHR, openEHR is not an open system. It is an open philosophy, I would say. Okay, it's a philosophy of openness. Okay, so there are a lot of commercial systems that are built in openEHR. Okay, there are like in Europe and all, especially many commercial providers. Their systems are not open. Okay, but fundamentally the principle is open. Okay, so the data schema is open. That means you can understand how the data is kept. The queries are standard queries, interoperable queries. Okay, so that is the principle. Okay, the application per se need not be open. Okay, there are some some open source applications that are available, but largely I think many large systems are not open from an application perspective. Okay, so I think it is like any other conventional system selection there. The only difference is, like Hannah said, here the approach is you get the platform. Okay, you procure the platform and then incrementally build required modules on top of it to build the integrated system, rather than saying that, okay, let me look at one system which does everything that I want to do and then try to buy it at enormous cost. Here we say data is a focus, so you buy a platform, okay, which is like an open platform architecture, so that you can you are sure that you can manage any kind of module on that, clinical module on that, and then you procure application modules as required. Either you procure or you build. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
and
right.
for example, Somerset at Thornton, they built the Corona COVID-19 application in 2 weeks' time, and that is their own development. The in-house IT developed it with the clinicians, and it is in the same open ecosystem with the commercial products based on openEHR. But if we have still time, I would like to say something about the Nordic EHR vendors. Do we still have time? I think so. Yeah. Okay. So Nordics is quite different with the openEHR development. So actually all the dominant EHR vendors in the Nordics, they started to change to openEHR themselves. So before any client said any demands. So DIPS in Norway, Campio, Sweden, Tietoevry in Finland, they started to change their internal data model to openEHR because they found it like a differentiator, a competitive differentiator towards the US giants like Epic and Cerner and so on. So they started themselves. And how I explained this UK architecture, where you have the data repository, you have the legacy, and then you start building the new modules based on openEHR, sitting on top of the data repository, legacy plus the new modules. Actually, this is the architecture what the Nordic vendors use themselves when they internally changed from legacy to openEHR. And actually, what they are aiming at today is that they want to change modules between different vendors. So, for example, a Finnish vendor could take innovative Norwegian modules to the same ecosystem because they are all being built with openEHR principles, and they can work, say, how do you say, if you have developed something on top of this platform, you can also run on top of another platform. Of course, we need to take into account some local extensions in archetypes and so on between the Nordic countries. But anyway, it's minimal, say, adjusting when we go.
Sure, that's great. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, Dilip, can I ask you again
Yeah.
a very fundamental question? Again,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Please.
uh, as you know, been involved in a whole lot of this EHR designing and
Yeah.
getting to know what is optional. So what the principle I liked about open EHR, and just correct me if my thinking is correct in this concept or not. The advantage of open EHR is as you get on to more specialized and therefore more complex information, right,
Right.
in models. If
Right.
I start, like, for example, the BP example of a GP,
Yeah.
now I want to move it on to the BP example of for an endocrinologist. Therefore,
Yeah.
the information that I bring in into that model, whereby
Right.
I might also have to say whether the BP was taken standing or whether it was taken while he was lying down, what
Right.
was the cup size and so on.
Right.
It is much easier to add on elements like this into an open EHR framework database rather than FHIR, because FHIR believes in actually cutting down the elements you bring in.
Right.
Am I right in saying
Uh,
this concept?
Yeah. So what we are saying is you have the core archetype that you use
Right.
contains all these data points. It's a maximal data set. Okay. So what you do, you use the same archetype for GP, but you keep only two data points. Okay. You remove all the other data points so that the GP form is simple. Okay. But you are keeping it in the same context, same schema.
Right. So you fill in only the sort of, in the tables or whatever, you fill in only the elements that are really filled in or needed for that level of
Okay,
specialization.
not
Correct?
really filling in alone. Okay, so you when the template is created, when you actually create the model for that particular use case, that is a template, you can remove all the unwanted fields so that they're not there in the system. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, but
Okay.
but it is a subset of the full archetype.
Okay. So then let me ask a related question.
Yeah,
Now, supposing we are going from the base up, from primary to secondary to tertiary level. Suppose we are building
right,
something, right?
right,
The point is at the tertiary level is where you'll have these maximum information and different elements of the information,
right,
because a cardiologist, what he wants in the BP reading, what he wants is much more than what the GP level is. So
right,
as we start moving up, right,
right.
is it easy for us to add on these elements in an open EHR platform, because it is not so easy in FHIR,
It
right?
it is.
Okay.
It is. See, you don't have to do anything because your GP template, that the template that you use for GP data, okay, is not the same template you're going to use for the tertiary care use case. Okay.
Right, right.
So, yeah. So at
So,
that point, when you create that, use the same archetypes, but you create the template that involves the data that the tertiary care needs. So what you
Okay.
do is you keep on creating, adding templates as required, but reuse
Okay.
the same archetypes.
All right. Just builds on to the the base,
Yeah, yeah.
the below foundation.
Correct, correct.
Yeah,
yeah,
so, Dr.
Yeah,
Pramod, just to add here, when you're saying we are adding, templates in an OpenEHR paradigm from an implementation, technology implementation point of view, you are not making any code changes. You are introducing another template into the system, and now data can be managed in the context of that template. So that's why it becomes scalable. So whether the point that Dilip was saying that you add more tables, and the database number of tables keeps increasing, that is not required at all. That is not a problem when you go in for an OpenEHR based repository.
That's a very important point. So it is
mm.
very
and
much more
and you
yeah.
easier.
can,
Yeah. Please
Anna,
go
sorry.
ahead. Anna. Please
So,
go
so
ahead.
you can think that the templates are like on the application level, and you are like collecting data from different archetypes to the template, and the template is like a use case, and you don't need to collect all data that is in the archetype. So you only collect the data that is, say, important in that use case.
Gotcha.
And it's important that the archetypes are like maximal data sets, and then you just utilize, the attributes from those archetypes that you need for the use case.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
and if I may say something, a template is like a version. Probably as you go, version one maybe GP. The next one shipping on that would be probably what an internal medicine has for the BP, and then the cardiology has for somewhat like that, right?
Yeah,
Conceptually.
it's like a use case, you know.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Template is collecting data from archetypes for a specific use case, and you can have hundreds or thousands or millions of use cases, so there's no limit for templates.
And it's easy to build on top of the other, right?
Yes, and if you are a application developer, you get the data through these templates.
Thank you. Fine.
Okay. I'm very happy we have so lively discussion.
Okay, so there was one comment from Dr. Sudha. I thought I'll just kind of take it a little bit. Okay, so Dr. Sudha, what you say is correct. Okay, so what Hannah was explaining about is a context of all scripts being an existing system, and then you want to introduce newer modules, okay, into the into the system, and that you want to build on using an openEHR system. So it's like in that migration, you don't have to overnight migrate from all scripts to openEHR system. You can actually bring in an openEHR system in parallel. You bring a parallel repository, and then you can actually, if you want, you can pull data from all scripts into the repository, because this new platform, openEHR platform, will now expose APIs that can be used to build additional modules that you need, that all scripts is not currently supporting. Okay.
Yeah, and actually, all script, even if they are a legacy vendor, they thought that they can benefit from the open architecture, because then they can have like innovative modules, innovative functionalities that are not inside all script, without the users to replace all script to another system. So it was like win-win in that situation.
Okay.
Yeah, because replacing something like an alt script is not going to be an easy task. So it has to be phased out very slowly.
Yeah. See, need not be phased out is also, see, you have a legacy system, you are paid for it, you can keep it with the functionality that it has. Okay. And then the newer applications that you need to be built out fast. Like, for example, COVID was as a classic use case in Europe, where like openEHR system suddenly, came into prominence, because like Hannah said, hospitals could build out a COVID solution in a couple of weeks' time. Okay, now this is really virtually impossible, like with traditional monolithic solutions. Okay, so we had a movement which happened in openEHR community, where people from all the countries came together to create the clinical models that are required for COVID-19, because it was a new case. And in a matter of couple of weeks, we had mature clinical models available and shared openly for anybody to pick and use. And then
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and actually, when we talk about COVID-19, okay, we made all sorts of corona applications, assessment applications, but during these months or even weeks, we have learned more about COVID-19. So we wanted to change that application. So we wanted to change the templates and forms and so on. And that was very, very easy to do with the openEHR module.
I think that is a very strong point of openEHR. The fact that you can do the changes and the flexibility in being able to add on or whatever it is, or that's a very strong point, and that really is very encouraging.
Yeah.
And what Rupa or Dilep, I don't remember which one, said in the beginning, I think in India you would have a big opportunity to develop these kind of functional modules on top of any openEHR data repository and sell them to other countries, sell them to Europe, be part of this, be center of excellence in India. I mean, you have wonderful capabilities, good software developers, say a good mindset, and I think you should go for it.
Okay. Thank you, Hannah. I think it's a great point. Yeah. Okay. I think, yeah, if there is nothing else, Pramod, is there anything else you would want to?
Okay, just one last point. So
Yeah.
supposing now you have taken an archetype, which is say basically come out from the UK or Europe, right?
Right.
And now we have to add an element or replace an element that is very Indian specific.
Right.
Something's not coming to my mind immediately, but I'm sure there are examples
Yeah.
like this.
Right.
How easy or how difficult would that be to make it Indian specific?
Actually, quite easy because there are a couple of different approaches. One is like okay, the way archetypes develop is like even if they originate in UK, for example, okay, they come to a global community, okay, the CKM, where we can also, as Indians, we can also join and bring in our perspective. Okay, so there is really nothing like a very local archetype. It is archetypes in the international CKM must truly global. Okay, it can take inputs from every region and evolve to that. Suppose in case it is not, and you still want to actually use it, you have a mechanism to specialize the archetypes. So you can take an existing archetype. There are modeling tools, and then you can actually modify. You can make modifications to suit your particular requirement. It's actually, I would say, 5 minutes job. Okay, provided you know what you want, and
Great, thank you.
clinicians can do it. Okay, so that's a fundamental thing. That's where I'm when I was telling in the beginning that you can bring the clinician in the middle of managing the system as it evolves, because they can actually create the models that they want.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and actually, for example, Norway, the healthcare sector, they say that around 95% of all their archetypes that they have translated to Norwegian language are straight from the international CKM. So they have localized only a few. So what is then localizing? Like Dilip told, you can add some elements that belong to the country specific environment. So and of course then if there is no archetype existing that is like a specialized archetype, then you can make a new archetype. And what we are facing now in Finland is that we are building social care archetypes, because social care is so different in the Nordic countries from other parts in Europe. So we need to build some new archetypes, but we are then going to publish them in the CKM, international CKM, so that everybody can utilize them.
Thank you so much. That's good to hear.
Okay, I think, Rupa, I think we are done.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we are good to.
Yeah.
We've answered all the questions. No new messages now on the chat.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah.
No
Thanks for
problem.
joining, and it's good that your throat held up and you were able to talk. Thank you very much. Thanks to all the participants for taking time and joining us on the webinar today and being patient and sitting through.